Hi everyone, this is a monumental moment for Mark and I on the Electronic Cafe. You know, we've been fortunate enough to meet some incredible artists, and this particular episode is no different. We've just had an incredible conversation with the one and only Gary Numan. Mate, I can't believe what a humble, down-to-earth guy he is. It's just unbelievable.
I mean, a couple of things that spring to mind. One, I know that Gary Numan has formed a massive part of our musical tapestry all of our lives. I love Gary Numan, but out of the two of us, I know what Gary Numan means to you. So I've been a little bit worried about you for about the last few days, that it just might be a bit too much. But the weird thing is, it was a fantastic conversation. And after an hour, I thought, I'm talking to Gary Numan. It sounds silly.
Yeah, we're down the pub with him, right? It was just amazing.
I just look. I thought, my God, I'm just chatting with Gary Numan. Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, he's great. I mean, the songs he's done, just everything. He's Gary Numan. He's the boss. You know, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, should we let everyone see the conversation?
Yep. Everybody, dive in and have a look at our brilliant chat with the one and only Gary Numan. Before we start, I've got a message from David Brooks. He's a friend of ours, and he said, I don't know if he's setting me up here, but he said, say hi and ask Gary if we can wear white the next tour.
Telling me sacked. No one mentions white ever.
Hey everyone, welcome to this very special episode of Electronic Cafe. And this is a massive moment for Mark and I as we meet a legend, and also the headline act of the very first gig I went to. So Mark and I want to welcome Mr. Gary Numan. Welcome to Electronic Cafe, my friend. It's an absolute honour to have you on here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Really good to see you.
All this Berserker stuff's coming out now. It's all very much white for the next few weeks.
That's one of my questions. I mean, you've got all the Numa albums come out on streaming platforms tomorrow, and tomorrow, and then you got the Berserker album coming out on vinyl, which is beautiful.
Yeah, there's lots coming actually. I've been talking to BMG about. We've done one deal already for back catalogue. So I think that's Berserker, Fury, Strange Charmer, Machine and Soul, which they actually asked for, which I couldn't. I was a bit surprised about. And then 3 live albums, which I forget what they are now. All the Numa Years thing. And then we're just about to sign it. Actually, hopefully we'll sign the next one today, and it's just 4 live albums. There's 4 live albums, all coming, all unreleased before. So Wembley and 1000 Show and things like that coming. And then I'm just talking to them now about a much bigger back catalogue deal for sort of most of the rest of it. Not Beggars, obviously, because that's Beggars owns stuff. So I'll never get that back. And then possibly something fairly major for 2028 when it's my 50th anniversary. You know, so we're still talking about that, but they've got a really, really good idea for how to mark that. Outside of touring, I'll do
sure. Touring. That sounds amazing.
So there's loads going on. I actually got the latest schedule for it yesterday. It goes up to 2030. So there's a lot of stuff, and they're packaging it together and they're putting it into groups. There's like 2020 Vision Live is all the live albums, and I think Director's Cut is going to be all the other stuff where it mixes, I don't know, Jagged and Jagged Edge and Jagged Live and into one package. And and we do have a lot of unreleased stuff, a lot of that sort of era. Since I've been with Aid's really good at collecting, keeping stuff. I just tend to get rid of it. And so we've got loads and just an incredible amount of different versions or early versions that we, works in progress. So like Here in the Black, I think we ended up with well over 30 different versions of that before we chose them. So all that's there, all that's there that could come out as part of these packages. And so it isn't just the new music is slightly different because it is what it is. But with the other stuff that's coming later, we have, we're able to. It's not just re-released and stuff that people have already had. There is that obviously because that's part of it, but there's so much other stuff that we can add to it, different things that we can add to it and make these packages much more interesting for fans. And I think that's when work in the back catalogue really starts to work and becomes a good sort of value for money thing for fans to get into, rather than just repeating what you've got.
They can just turn off. Some people moves in circles. Some people need the heroes. But I don't mind. I don't mind. Please listen to the sirens. We'll wish to be your friend.
With Berserker and Fury and all of those things, if I'd have had unreleased stuff, then I would have added it, obviously, because it just makes it more interesting to people. But I had a different sort of attitude towards it all back then. If a song didn't work, or if a version didn't work, I'd move on and dump the one that was there before. I had this real weird thing about erasing anything that wasn't work. So I could rip my own head off, the stupidity of that. I've just not been very good at seeing it outside of my own sort of highly stressed little environment. But luckily, like I say, since Aid's been around, he's much more level-headed.
Yeah. Well, we spoke to Thomas Dolby when they was asking him has he got anything else around the flat Earth, and he said, "No, you've got it all." He said, "I've got rid of everything." So they literally just had to bring out a remastered version of Flat Earth. There was no extra tracks. There was nothing that he had tucked away. He got rid of it as well.
It's like, say now, right? I'm working on new stuff now. It's going very slowly, unfortunately, but because there's just a whole world of other things going on. So I've done. I've got 2 songs ready for the new album so far that I've sent to Aid, but it took me about a month on each one, which is ridiculous for me. I normally a week. I started it. It's all gone. Not if it's a bit off to Aid. Ready. So it's to do, I think, with a lack of confidence, actually. So I write it. It all comes very, very quickly. Do a chorus, do a verse, do whatever, and there you go. And then I think I must be able to write a better chorus than that. It's got to be. You can't just take the first thing you come up with. And so I start. So at the end of that first day, I maybe got 2 or 3, 4, 5. Next day, I'll go through them. And each time you do it, sometimes there's quite a substantial amount of reworking to make that new idea melody. Chord changes, different sounds, try different, all that sort of thing, if it gets that far. And then the next day, no. And before you know it, when you've done a few things that you're just not happy with, chances are the first thing was the right thing anyway, and it's your lack of confidence that's made you keep searching. If you do a few days of that and you still haven't found the one that resonates with you the most, you think that's the one, you start to, my confidence, which is fragile at the best of times, sort of just disintegrates. And then you start to doubt yourself more and more. So then nothing sounds good enough.
Yeah.
You've gone, so you lose all perspective on it. And it's this horrible sort of, I think, of said this before, this sort of horrible sort of downward spiral of collapsing confidence.
Yeah.
And it's a fucking nightmare,
Yeah.
you know. And normally, when I start a new album, that happens at some point, often. But I get there, it happens. You know, you get through it, and then you're off again. But this time, I started with it. I started straight into that, so it's been a grim start to it, which is you want it to be exciting and fun. You know, you want it to come in and you.
Yeah.
But it's so. It never is. You know, you have moments of that. You have moments where you do something, and you just think you're just really, really happy with it. You know, without sort of being big-headed, you just think that's great. I love that. But it's mostly not. It's mostly not being happy with it and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and going around in circles and getting depressed and going in and trying not to be miserable with the kids. You know, this whole horrible journey. And that's what it's like. You know, that's what making them is like. And I just wish it wasn't like that. But I think that's entirely because I don't have the level of confidence that is really a requirement to do this. You need to be confident about what you're doing, or else you just keep chasing your own tail for week after week after week. At the end of it, you know, when it's all done, I do at that point have a batch of songs that I'm happy with. I wouldn't really, well, it's a lie, actually. I did with Machine of Soul. I said I wouldn't release them if I wasn't happy with it. I wouldn't anymore. But I envy those people that go into a studio and just think that everything they do is great.
I was in a car crash, or was it the war? But I've never been quite the same. Little white lies like I was there.
That's probably why your albums are so good, though, because you do go for it, and there's like you've come through it shining at the end. I mean, you know, when I read this, it's like the journey, like the good and the lows and the highs. It's the same with the album, right? But when it's there, it's magnificent.
Yeah. I do think that not thinking that you're God's gift to music does make you try harder. It does. It makes sure that you do not accept the first thing that you do. That, you know, that desire to want to find something better. You know, that whether it comes from a feeling of insecurity or like whatever, it doesn't matter. If there's something about you that makes you work really, really hard to try to find the absolute best thing that you can with everything, with every bit of music, with every melody line, with every word of the lyric, you know, if you really are working hard to make sure that really is the best that you can do, then that's a good thing. Just from the person doing it, that's quite a painful experience, you know, because you're most of the time you're unhappy and you're not feeling good about yourself and what you're doing. So it's not the fun sort of glamorous thing that I think songwriting seems to be. You know, the idea, I think a lot of people have the idea of you go into a studio and it's glamorous and it's all technology and it's, you know, and you're doing all this stuff and we're all very clever. It's not like that. It's not like that. I work on my own, you know. If you looked at my studio, I'm in it now. You know, I can't show you because it's probably like.
We spoke to James Atkin out of EMF, and he's in his studio, and he turned the camera around, and his wife had put the ironing board, the bikes, like from in front of the camera, it looked like this high-tech studio, but the back of it had just a dumping ground.
Oh well, mine's not as bad as that. It is a studio all the way through it, but I've got one big screen which is a touch screen. And that's the desk. So I don't have any actual desk with faders and dials and things on it. Mine's just a touch screen, like a giant iPad, and that does everything. I've got a little computer around the back that you can't even see, and that's got all the instruments in it. I don't have any synthesizers or anything like that. No guitars in here, nothing, no amps, nothing like that. I've got one little MIDI keyboard over there, and one microphone, a couple of speakers, and that's it. Everything is in the computer now. Now, if I wanted to, I could bring things in, obviously, if I wanted to do a guitar part. But mostly if I do guitar parts now, I just go straight to the computer anyway and use the virtual guitar processor, because they're amazing. Yeah, no, it's not particularly impressive, and it's dark and.
It gets vindicated, mate, when you're in front of 10, 15,000 people absolutely loving what you're doing. That kind of validates all that dark moment you went through in the materials you bring out, right? Because, I've probably seen you 50 times live, Mark probably the same, and, you always deliver, and the crowd love you. So, that's the reward, I guess, for the bit you go through at the beginning, right?
Gary, you're an artist, aren't you? I mean, art, you suffer for your art. I mean, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I've heard you talk about before about your lack of confidence or putting out your best stuff. But I mean, the songs you've written formed part of our musical tapestry, our life. I mean, you've written so many brilliant songs. I understand how it works, but like the self-doubt really shouldn't be there, just because what you've done over the last 40, 50 years has just been unbelievable. I think most artists would like any one or two of some of your songs.
Yeah.
Well, lovely, thank you. That's very nice. I think the thing is, when I listen to my stuff, and then I listen to people that I admire, my stuff always sounds less. It just does, and I don't know if that's because you just see yourself differently. I certainly know of other artists that think that their stuff is better than anybody else's, and are quite happy to say so.
Yeah.
I'm not that at all. I enjoy the end result. I don't always enjoy the making of the records. That there are moments of euphoria. But when I come up with a riff for My Name Is Ruin, I was jumping around like a fucking kid at Christmas.
That's a great song.
That's it. And I ran inside and Gemma, you got to come. Gemma's not massively keen on things like My Name Is Ruin because she calls them, she says they're jerky. She don't like jerky rhythms. So I ran in and come and got her, and she came and she was sort of like lukewarm about it. I go, oh fuck no, But yeah, so there are those moments, and those moments are so fantastic that they sort of make up for the 2 or 3 weeks before the last moment like that. And that's what it's like. Your 2 or 3 weeks of tortuous, painstaking, inching forward progress, the day where it just all comes together and everything works and it's just fantastic. And then you go back to again. And that is the roller coaster that I've talked about before. Yeah. But what makes it worth it is the end of it, you've got the finished record. Aid's done all his magic on it, and you've got this thing, and now it sounds great, and you're really happy with it. And then you take it to the mastering, and it sounds even better. They just do something there that adds more magic to it, and now you're happy. You've got this thing that you've worked really hard on, and you've been through this painful journey, and you've got it. And if the artwork comes up great, that's down to me as well. Then I'm doubly happy. I feel like I've accomplished something on every level, where the record is concerned, and it's great. But then it goes into that period of where it's going to come out, and you've got to worry about what people are going to say about it. What the fans going to make of it, because they're not always kind. What the press going to say about it, obviously, and you're right back into that self-doubt thing again.
It's amazing you talk about that press bit, because I know sort of after the first 3 albums, the press got a bit cruel. Actually, Andy McCluskey was saying, like, You know, he couldn't believe at times how cold and cruel they could be to you. But then, you know, you survived all that and won. And, I look at people like Tears for Fears or Damon Albarn or Nine Inch Nails or Prince. They all said you're amazing. And for me, their opinions count far more than any critic. They all have referred to you as either a massive influence. I love, was it Prince's quote? I don't think anyone's worked out the genius of Gary Numan or something, which I thought was incredible. You know, from someone like Prince, that's pretty high praise, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's great. I love all that. It's really nice to hear. You know, the funny thing is, though, I think I've talked about this before. When you read that stuff, it's like they're talking about someone else. Do you know what I mean? I know I have said this before, but I'll quickly say it again. You know, I don't wake up in the morning and feel like I'm a legend, or I don't wake up in the morning and think, oh yeah, Prince said that. You know, how great am I? It's like you don't. It's weird. It's a lovely thing to be said. It's really lovely, and I am very genuinely very grateful for it. And I know it means something, and I know it's the sort of thing that most people would die for, to have that sort of thing. So I am aware of all of that, but somehow it feels disconnected to the real me, and that's when sometimes I don't know quite how to put it, because I don't see the Gary Numan part of me as an alter ego. I don't see it as a separate person, and yet somehow those comments seem to relate more to that than they do to me in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, like this morning, I'm supposed to be I was supposed to have taken Echo on the school run this morning. That's why we did this at 10:30, and then she fucked me about. You know, she got up late and apparently she didn't have a lesson today, blah blah blah. So she's gone in an Uber a little bit later, and I'm not sitting there thinking, I'm a legend. You can't do that.
I'll keep me waiting. Do you know I am?
Right. I walk around feeling absolutely the same as anybody else all the time. I do not sit there thinking I'm a really, really clever songwriter, you know, or I'm a really great performer, or any of that. I can't imagine what that must be like to think like that, you know. So so I don't even know where I'm going with this, but all those lovely things that are said, I'm aware of them, and yet somehow they just drift up by me. You know, or I'd be an arrogant fucker if I took all that in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You have all those people saying that stuff. You must think, oh, I'm amazing. I don't at all. You know, so somehow it sort of passes me by.
But I think that's the nice thing about. That's probably why you're such a humble, lovely guy, because you know you get it. But yeah, it's an interesting reaction. But I think that's what's good about it. You're very grounded and, you know, down to earth guy.
And if it's any consolation, I've got 4 girls. Andy's got 2 girls. They muck you around all the time anyway. So then they're going to let you be the superstar, are they?
That's true.
I got the most credibility I think ever from my kids when they read that Kurt Cobain had mentioned me in his book. All of a sudden, I'm right up there now.
Now look at me, like a storm tripping drag. I'll bet you feel exactly like I do. It's so disgusting, I'm so tired of rhythm and beatles in arms. I don't want your point of view. Nothing to do, nothing to steal, and there's nothing to say.
Again, I think the thing that keeps me grounded, down to earth, and I am, I believe. The thing that generates that is, first of all, right from the very, very beginning, I was aware of how lucky I was. You know, there were so many things that fell into place at just the right time. The picture disc with Arthur Electric, you know, all of that, bubbling under, bit of Top of the Pops, all of those things. I felt lucky, not talented, from day one, and I've never really lost that feeling. And I am aware that I need to keep making good records to justify still being here, still have people buy them, to still have people turn up at the shows, to still have a fan base. It's not something you earn once and stays with you forever, or it shouldn't be. It should be something that you constantly earn. And the pressure of that, I guess, is what keeps me grounded. And the fact that I went through that Machine and Soul period where I wasn't writing very well, I didn't have many ideas. That was a horrible experience, and I went for a long period of not writing anything. My confidence was just, it's not great at the best of times, but it was absolutely destroyed then. And so the awareness that is out there, that problem can happen and could happen again at any time. That's why the slow start to this record is particularly difficult, because the fear that you're back into that. If you think like that about it, that keeps you grounded. That fear that you're not going to be able to prove yourself again, that the next record won't be as good. You might have gone through that golden period of having just loads of great ideas all the time, and you're maybe through that. You never know. You never know when it's going to happen. And I've definitely had it once, arguably more times, depending on who you talk to. But I've definitely had it once, and it's awful. Pretty soul-destroying experience, and it can last for years.
I've heard songwriters say that when they're in their imperial phase, they're just writing for themselves. They're not looking at any competition or anything, and it just like happens. They hit the button every time. And then when they're going through a bit of a lull, they're looking at the opposition and they're trying to write adjusting to other people rather than being totally blinkered on their own thing. And then when you kind of second guess yourself, I'm not necessarily talking about you, I'm talking about other artists. When you're trying to look at what the zeitgeist is, that's when you're probably not doing your best work.
I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's exactly what happens. And that's definitely what happened with me. That was the first time with Machine and Soul. There was a build up to that. It wasn't just Machine and Soul that was not so good. There'd been the career was declining for quite some time. Initially, I had all the not confidence, but I was focused and single-minded and doing what I wanted to do. Even when I lost the Beggars Banquet contract, I still thought I knew what I was doing and blah blah blah. But then there come a point. I think I would probably say Strange Charm was when it started, really started, and I wasn't sure then. There's so many people telling you what you should be doing. Always there is now. I still get people telling me what I should be doing, and there certainly was back then. And you just ignore it. You don't. I know what I'm doing. I don't need any advice. You keep it. But there comes a point when what you're doing isn't working. It's not doing the job, and so you start to doubt yourself, and that's bad news. Because then that advice, you think, well, maybe they got a point. Maybe I should listen. Maybe I should do a ballad. Maybe I should do whatever. And at that point, you're lost. You're lost. That I talked before many times about the tracks. Being on the tracks, and that moment you start listening to advice is the moment you just go sideways, walk away from the track, and then it's very, very hard to find your way back to that. I did, luckily, but that a lot of the reason for that was Gemma. After much arguing and debating, was able to make me realise what it was about what I did before that was different or special, whatever. And she was able to almost guide me by the hand back to, this is when you work like this is what people wanted, this is what people enjoyed, and this is when you were happiest. And she just brought me back to it. And I don't know that would have happened without her, because my attitude about my own ability was so poor. You know, the idea of getting backing vocals in and getting other people to play guitar, like Keith Beauvais and all these people, great players, much better than I was. I thought I saw myself as the weak link in my records.
Wow.
I really did. And when I started to see Gemma, and you know, she would say, you know, you don't play on your own records anymore. You know, why have you got all these other singers on your records? And I say, because I'm not good enough. You know, I'm good at writing songs, I think, but I'm not particularly good at. I'm not a great singer. I'm not a very good guitar player. And I say, so what I'm doing is it's still my songs, but I'm getting all these really good players on them, and so now they're more musical. And I think that was a reaction to what the press had been saying a little bit over the years, even though I said I ignored it and didn't do it. I think some of it gets to you, you know. But she said, no, you know, that's not true. The way you sing, she said, you might not have the best voice in the world, but it has a certain sound to it.
It's your voice.
A certain way, and that's what people liked, you know. But you know, it's sort in a way it needs a certain level of ego to accept that. You know, you've got to say, yeah, okay, you know. And I didn't have that, so I wouldn't accept that. I said, no, that's absolutely wrong. You don't know what you're talking about, you know. And I got we had some really bad arguments about it, you know, quite early on in a relationship. And she was saying the same thing about the playing, you know, and you know, you don't play keyboards very well, but the way you play them, it makes you come up with certain melodies because of that, you know, and that's all fading away now. You've taken you out of the records, and so that's why with Sacrifice, it was pretty much a one man effort.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it. I actually enjoyed making that one. Yeah, I do think, you know, I've mentioned many times before that how important she was to saving her career, but she really was.
No, mate, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, like that Exile Pure area, I mean, that was when you were like getting all the plaudits again, and it's just amazing.
I'm not down on the ground looking for a cure. I'm not saying that I'm the man, and I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm not asking for a miracle, and I'm not asking you to.
Mark and I were talking the other day about that sort of late 70s, early 80s period, and generically, like, the output from some of the artists then was ridiculous. And you know, when I started thinking about you, it was like from 79 to 80, you like Replicas, Pleasure Principle, Telecom, and you were touring. I mean, were you just living in a studio in that period?
I think it's even more than that. I mean, if you take 79 to 86,
Yeah.
where you did 10 studio albums in 9 years,
Same.
like literally back to back, and you know, in the studio, writing, recording, touring it, promoting it. That is phenomenal. You must just get totally burnt out, like on that treadmill.
The thing about Wembley, for example, was because I wanted to spend more time in the studio, you know, and yet I was making 3 albums in 12 months, whatever it was, 4 in a year and a half, you know, and yet I felt that sort of the exposure to the public, to the media, most of all, actually, that was the problem, was damaging me, and the amount of touring that I was doing was sort of getting in the way. I wanted to learn more about studio craft, you know, the limiters and compressors and all the stuff that comes with it. I wanted to learn more about that. I wanted to spend more time on the songwriting, because I was writing an awful lot. But I think the reason for that was, you know, you learn about writing songs by writing them. The more you write, the more you learn. The more you write, the faster you learn. So it was, for me, it was just like being at school, self-teach in a way. So I don't remember feeling burnt out at all. But the amount of studio albums, the thing that upset me the most was the press reaction to what I was doing. That was pretty different, and some of the public situations were a little bit unpleasant. But I just put that down to being famous. But I think a lot of it was just electronic music. When I came out with my sort of electronic music, it was different, and it was especially with Pleasure Principle, where I didn't have guitars in it, and I'm doing Top of the Pops with no guitar player on some of those things. I think that really just annoyed a business that was built around the guitar, and I think a lot of people saw it as almost insulting.
Yeah, I remember reading they were saying things like it's a fad. They're not real artists or musicians. I'm like, well, they are. They're artists because they're using something to create different sounds. It doesn't mean they're not artists, but the journalists were like, oh, it's a fad. I mean, here you are 40 odd years later still selling out venues and stuff. So, you won that battle, Mr. Numan.
You can whisper your Lord's prayer and pretend that it matters, but don't you wish to just listen? You can hide in the shadows and pretend I won't find.
I don't see it negatively. I really don't. I genuinely think a lot of the stuff that was written was unnecessarily hostile.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So I'm not excusing what they did, but I think a lot of it was genuinely the way they felt. They didn't like that sort of music. It wasn't guitar based, so it didn't resonate with them whatsoever. There was a lot of ignorance about electronic music to begin with. That you would press a button and the machine wrote the song for you. I wished. Not like that at all. So there was a lot of ignorance, and they didn't realize that you put as much into that, if not more, than a guitar player. The amount of music on an electronic record was often way more than you would actually hear on a guitar-based record. Guitar-based drums, piece of piss. You can record that in a few minutes. You want to layers and layers and layers of electronic technology and sounds and the rest of it, and going out and making samples and putting all that together. It took weeks. Huge amount of work went into the multiple layers of my electronic music anyway, especially Telecon onwards. I just think it was they just didn't understand it. They didn't like it, so didn't really listen to it, so didn't build up any kind of understanding about what it took to make it. And to say that machines wrote everything was just a really lazy, easy way to insult something that you didn't like. You can't sort of hang on to that sort of bad feeling. People are a bit ignorant. They say things that are a little bit stupid because they don't know any better, and then over time, presumably, they learn better.